Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, by the way, a little thrown off there because we jumped early and our transition is too short. Anyway, just little notes. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If we are watching, you're watching on YouTube. If you, I just got completely thrown off, so I'm going to start one more time. So it's really important for that transition to go better than it just did, because when it goes early, it goes fast. It's distracting. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion. Our second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today we're going to talk about mics. Now we're going to test a couple more mics and see how it goes. And so we'll stay tuned for that. All right, now let's go jump into the questions. Mitch, what do we got?
Thank you, Alex. Our first question coming in from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, California. California, I just made a new state. Canada, sorry about that. With yesterday's news of Zoom patching an exploit in the Mac version that could have let bad actors gain control of the Mac, including root access, nasty. How do you protect your computers from threats, especially when app devs don't always fix these quickly?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I had not heard of this announcement, but when I launched Zoom this morning, it updated for me. And I did not download an update. You know, sometimes you'll download an update while you're live and you go, oh, somebody mentions a new thing. I was like, oh, that'll update when I relaunch Zoom. I did not. One, is Zoom helping me out? Two, have I been compromised? Anybody know?
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Well, the answer to Chris's question, it was publicly made available yesterday, and yeah, they can force the update. So Zoom itself forced the update. But you know, there are lots of things you can do to protect yourself from potential problems like this, but none of them are foolproof. But the simplest thing is almost every one of us here on the phone is on a NATed router that takes the intranet address, the outside world, and converts it to your home set of addresses. You can turn off certain forms of dynamic port forwarding and things like that will protect you. And don't take random USB drives is the other thing.
Yeah, don't accept random. I mean, the reality is that the chances of this kind of thing, specifically with Zoom, if they don't patch it, obviously there's a danger. But assuming that they patch it within a reasonable amount of time, the average chance that something is going to happen to you specifically is very low, probably less than being hit as a pedestrian going across a street. Like, you just have to understand, like, we get into these theoretical things. Now, if you are someone who is prominent in the press, prominent in politics, prominent in those other things, you need to be much more careful about how you do things and what you use. And this is why, you know, a lot of people have, you know, they can install those things. So, like, for instance, there are some people we work with Zoom. They're not allowed to install Zoom. They can only use the web browser. You know, they can only use this. They can only use that. And so if you're really someone who potentially is a target, then that's a different ball of wax. As an average consumer, the chances of you being a target are pretty low, unless you're being generalized as a generalized target for bots and so on and so forth that, you know, kind of comes with, general phishing and so on and so forth. But this specific type of problem is probably not something that affected very many people, to be honest. Go ahead, Mitchell.
It's still pretty scary that something might have root access, and you hear about it after the fact. I mean, I've got a WatchGuard, but would that protect me or not? I don't know.
Well, you hear after the fact because you don't want to tell anyone it's there until it's fixed.
Yeah, so I see that. It's sort of like somebody telling me now that eggs are bad for me. And I'm like, well,
I eat a lot of eggs.
A lot of eggs.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So, Alex, given your general celebrity and elite status in our community, and especially saying what you just did, do you ever think, I'm just asking you, do you ever think about, like, I don't want to flaunt that stuff too much publicly because it might make you a bigger target for somebody saying, listen to what he said, and now I'm in his system?
Yeah, but I mean, that's the truth. The truth is, you know, you want to tell people what they're, you know, I think people get worried about it, and I don't think my celebrity is high enough that someone's going to look at it and go, oh,
no,
let's look at that.
I think you're pretty important.
Okay, thanks, Chris. That's special. Anyway, so but I think that we have worked on projects where we were targets of state actors. So you that's a whole different world. Like where you don't install things, you have things. A lot of your computers, some of your computers are not connected to the internet. There's the things that have and things that are important are not connected to the things that aren't important. So that's part of it is really carting that off. Go ahead, Peter.
I was about to say that's and if you go into the large enterprise world, you mentioned in many places where people can't install Zoom, they have to use the web browser. But beyond that, large enterprises, I know I used to manage some of them, have a whole bunch of technology that's installed that is actually looking for threat actors in the data stream coming across and will filter them out, or in some cases fight back.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a long story. Anyway, Courtney.
Yeah, we have to watch out because Hollywood is chock full of Macs and bad actors. So the safest way in a lot of these exploits operate is they find an exploit of an overflow or something, but then they have to get an executable into the machine somehow to use that exploit, and that always comes in through some phishing exploit where you'll get an email that says, your package couldn't be delivered, click here, and there it loads the exploit that will then take advantage of that overflow problem or whatever weakness there was in the original Zoom code. So just when you get emails, if you don't know who they're from, never click on them. These days, they can execute something just by clicking on the email to read it, much less never open up any attachments to an email that comes unsolicited, regardless of how important it looks.
And now that we're going back to school, BCC, blind CC is really, really important. The beginning of school is the first month is me usually telling every teacher that sends something out about our kids that I don't want to be copied on everything. I need them to use blind CC. I say it nicely, but they will send all the parents. And the problem is that building that familiarity puts us all at risk. So if you do a 50 people, that makes phishing infinitely easier. So you always want to, if you're going to send it out to a group, you're always sending it out to blind CC. Next question.
Jens Olson from Sandpoint, Idaho. What is the best way to get audio out of an analog mixer and into NDI source?
Go ahead, Mickey.
BirdDog has an app called the Dante NDI Bridge, which allows you to connect sources that are in your Dante network to NDI transmissions through a Windows computer. So you can get an analog to Dante interface, such as an Audinate AVO, or there are ones from Shure as well, and Tascam and the like. And once it's on your Dante network, use the Dante NDI bridge and get that on your NDI world. Alternatively, you can also get an analog SDI audio embedder. Like there are ones from AJA, Links also has them. And then hook that up to a box, like say from Magewell, that turns SDI into NDI, and you can go that route as well.
Next question.
Asmuk Gajar from Cape Town, South Africa has a question. To calibrate meters, Mickey did a tone calibration. Always wondered, by what standard are our meters measured at? Is there a tone generated that should be minus 24 LUFS? Should we calibrate periodically? What generates the tone?
Good, Mickey.
Since the meters that we use here, the WLM meters, are digital meters, they actually don't need to be calibrated. They just need to be configured accordingly. What we did was to test the meters and make sure they are reading what we expect it to read. Since we are measuring LUFS, which stands for loudness units relative to full scale, if you send a full scale constant tone to it, or a constant tone at a relative level, we can tell if the meter is reading what we are expecting it to read. What generates tone? Many mixers and recorders could generate tone. There are also little tone generator boxes. NTI has a bunch of them. I think, if I recall correctly, the Whirlwind Q box also could generate tone. You can also buy little Shure little tone generator barrels. Yeah, and like even I'm using a 744T as my preamp, and this has tone as well.
Go ahead, Bill.
The other thing, if you want to search for those devices that will put a tone online at a fixed volume level, signal injector is another term you can search for. I remember when I was studying this for my radio third class license decades ago, they were talking about the difference. And some things do have specific technical standards, like a line level being 1 volt peak to peak in an envelope. So there are some standards that determine this is the range of loudness that you should expect. And if you maximize it, it will equal something like 1 volt somewhere that everybody understands universally. So there are some standards out there.
And go ahead, Courtney.
And if you want to generate tones and you don't have a tone generator, Audacity, which is a free cross-platform program, and there it comes now, can generate tones. It's a pull down, and you can tell it to generate a sine wave of 20 seconds at such and such a frequency, and it will generate those and create a file for that, and you can just play it back that way.
Next question.
Robert Shoji from Los Angeles, California. Has anyone on the panel recorded music in Ambisonics? Have you downmixed your Ambisonics recordings to Dolby Atmos?
Go ahead, Mickey.
I raised my hand because I didn't see another hand raised currently. I have not recorded music on Ambisonics, but I've recorded a lot of ambience in Ambisonics. And yes, you can. It's not downmix because you're converting from one format to another. So Ambisonics microphones record in what's called an A format, which is the raw microphone-specific format. You need to convert that to a B format, which is a more standardized format. Once it's in B format, you can open it up in plugins like, say, from DRVR and from, I think Rode has a free one that can convert that B format into a specific multi-channel format that you want, be it 5171 up to Atmos 714 if you want.
And essentially, it's putting it into the beds correctly. So it's not going to convert something that you have in Ambisonics, to objects inside of Atmos. So when we talk about Atmos specifically, it's not going to convert. It's only going to move those Ambisonics into the beds. Is that correct, Miggy?
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. For Ambisonics, it will be you don't want to place it in a as an object because you are not moving that around. Conversion is
right.
It needs to stick to those specific channels that they are assigned to, or else it will not work.
Yeah. Next question.
James Hutchinson in Dublin, Ireland. Is the Insta360 Link now the preferred choice webcam over the Brio?
Oh, I would say that it is I raise my hand. See, now I'm getting confused when I'm host and not host. I would say that it's the heir apparent. So we're testing it. I have one here. A bunch of us have bought. I've talked to a lot of people who have been buying these. So I think that it is kind of rushing through the system. But so far, it does look like it's a superior camera to the Brio. It's not as good as a 6K, so it's not like I'm going to replace what I have here. But it is as a web camera, it's pretty impressive. I'm still a little until I figure out a way to package it better, and we've got some suggestions here that I'm working on. But until I figure out how to package it better, I don't know if I would send it out just because it's hard to. I'm afraid it'll break, and I'm also afraid that someone might break it trying to install it. As if you're sending it out to lots of random people. So the moving parts concerns me as using it for a mail-out solution, whereas when you work with just random people that you're sending kits out to, just them putting it back into a package that you built for this, it's quite possible for them to break it. Not everybody's mechanical. So you have to be kind of careful of that. So that's the one reason we may not do that. But as a personal camera, as an overhead camera, I'm going to be taking it. I got to be in LA on Thursday morning. I'm going to be using this in the hotel room, so we'll be able to test it. This is going to be what I'm going to test for that. So, but anyway, that's some of the overview of what we're looking at right now. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, this is exactly why I think, a new piece of gear comes out, everybody gets excited about it, and everybody is very excited about this because it looks like a really good product, but it hasn't been battle tested yet because it is so new. So I think, Alex, this makes perfect sense to me. If you desperately need to change, it might be a good thing to try out, but there may turn out to be a flaw 3 or 4 months later when a lot of people are reporting that mount is not working anymore, or they got something hit it and it knocked off and broke too easily. So word's out, or the decision's out, I think, still.
I will say that given the technology, we talked about this in previous shows, if they took this from a 1/2-inch chip to a full-inch chip, put an HDMI output on it, they'd sell it for $400. They would sell as many as they could make. Like literally, that'd just be how fast can the factory pump them out. We're really moving into a remote work, world where people do need to have better cameras. Next question.
Next question, Robert Shoji from Los Angeles. What power source do you recommend for the Sound Devices MixPre 6.2 that has a good balance of capacity, size, and ease of use in the field?
Go ahead, Mickey.
I'm a big fan of these eSmart batteries. They are manufactured by Inspired Energy, though they are also sold by, rebranded by companies like Remote Audio and Audio Root. I would get the battery, plug it into a battery distribution system. This one's from Remote Audio. There are also really good ones from PSC, Professional Sound Corp, and also Audio Root. And this is because usually in the field, you're not only powering your mixer, you're powering preamps, you're powering wireless receivers, and you can distribute the single battery to multiple devices. The Sound Devices does have NPF Sony-style battery plates. Although once you plug them into the MixPre, they end up being very bulky and very cumbersome in a sound bag situation. What I would recommend to get your battery distribution into a MixPre is to use a battery plate that has a Hirose input. Companies like Hawkwoods have them, and also Cable Techniques. Although the Cable Techniques one is a little long, so the Hirose connector tends to stick out. And I think Sound Devices also sells one. I think they released it a year ago, though they look very much like the Hawkwoods one. So I think it's just a rebranded Hawkwoods adapter. Don't use the AA's. They're just enough to do a switch over. They won't last you a single sit-down interview.
It's good to have you back, Mickey. Mitchell.
Yeah, the setup we use is very much like what Mickey was suggesting. When we build like a camera system, it's usually like a big gold or a V-mount battery, and then it goes into a distribution system like Mickey was showing, and then a D-tap. And then the D-tap has a Hirose on the other end and plugs into the Sound Devices. Or in my case, I used to use my Pix 240 with it, and it's very solid, works great, and you're powering your whole setup through one battery.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, mostly Mickey covered most of it. The PSC stuff, I kind of prefer they have a BDS. It's a portable one, goes in a bag, and this one that kind of goes in your cart because it will the Power Star Mini Triple Play 2. What a long name. It takes 3 different power inputs and will switch between them, as well as 9 different power outputs. So you can use that to kind of manage all your power. You can have battery going into one of those power inputs and an AC transformer that's transforming down to 12 volts DC power supply plugged into another one. So if you lose power, it'll switch over automatically and it'll still power everything on your cart, or if you can fit it in your bag.
How does it know which one to use? Do you set that, or is it automatic?
I think it's automatic.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
I'd like to disagree with everything that Mickey said, just for the sheer sport of the sparring, because it just
to be difficult.
Mickey, it is so awesome to have you here. The depth of knowledge is amazing.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Just going back to what Courtney was saying. Yes, I'm a big fan of PSC. Their Power Star Triple Play allows you to plug in 3 batteries, and it takes the power based on voltage level. So
got
it doesn't like finish one battery off.
Typically, if you have somehow it's going through a power supply, that's going to be slightly higher than the batteries typically, and it'll pop over. Is that?
Yeah, if you have, say, a 16-volt charger plugged in and your batteries are 14.7, 14.8,
Right.
yeah, then it would prioritize that charger, an AC supply. This is for bag use primarily, but for cart use, what we use is the PowerStar Life. PowerStar Life, lithium iron phosphate. They are rack mount battery packs and can run a full cart, 10, 12 hours, depending on how much you're powering.
That's great. Next question.
I'm Ferguson in Phoenix, Arizona. Karl, can you talk about the distance learning that Australia has been doing long before the pandemic using video, computers, and internet? Is this a model that we should be looking at globally for education?
Go ahead, Karl.
I don't know if it's a model to be looking at globally. So it started back with the Royal Flying Doctors back in the 1920s. So essentially a lot of sheep stations, cattle stations, and remote towns got given radios so they could radio in for the flying doctors. Those radios were used for schooling when they weren't needed for emergencies. So kids on those sheep stations and out in remote communities would do schooling via the air over CB radio. It officially became official after the Second World War. So in the 1950s, each state runs their own education. So each state had what was called School of the Air. That ran pretty much via two-way radio right up until the turn of the century. And then around the year 2000 to 2010, they transitioned to internet, which was video one way, and high quality audio two ways. That went up like that to about 2010. And then for 2010, we've got essentially a video conference. So Zoom essentially. Apparently the 2010 onwards model was used in public schools in urban areas during COVID. So they took the School of the Air concept. The other thing about School of the Air is some of these kids out there, they may just be solitary child out on the sheep station. They're the only child. So 4 times a year, they fly the kids into a local community. So they actually go to school 1 week every 3 months. They're actually in a real school with other kids from School of the Air, and they actually can socialize in real life. So that's one of the things they do as well in School of the Air. But it's still running. Starlink is a big part of it now. So Starlink is providing this not just for School of the Air, but also for a lot of other emergency situations. Starlink is being funded, or partially funded by the Australian government, going out to these rural communities. So that's the other side of it as well, is Starlink coming in, but that's actually changing it quite readily in the last few years as well.
That's really great. Next question.
OH Space Doctor, Vienna in Adelaide, Australia. What's the latest on John Pretto's rocket launch next year? Where can people go to learn more?
Go ahead, John.
Okay, so OH Space is actively building. This is the Nova payloader. This is a 1960s rocket from Estes. And the unique thing about this guy is it's got this clear tube section where you're supposed to put ants and roaches. And I don't know what Alex put up here, but so we're taking this rocket and we're multiplying by 12XL. And I think Dennis has a graphic for us to see. Yes, here it is. Okay, so the rocket's 21 feet tall. The clear section is 49 inches. Inside that clear section, we'll have multiple cameras. Hopefully, Alex, we need your help on configuring the camera package inside this rocket. And this thing will fly on an O8000, which is the largest commercial motor that you can fly. It's got 2,000 pounds of thrust. And the rocket's going to weigh about 300 pounds. And then I'll put all this stuff up on OH Space. I haven't populated the site yet, but that's what we're working on.
Go ahead, Bill.
I just want to say how proud I am to be associated with people this crazy. It's just so much fun. This 12-foot, we were talking about it yesterday offline, John Pretto and I, and he said, yeah, we were out there for the actual launch of last year's rocket, and I was going, so do you have to go to a different line? Because we were having trouble even with last year's rocket. It was big enough, but those little launch rails, we were at the biggest ones and we were almost pushing it. It was hard to get it on there. And he said, yeah, we have to go way farther out. The safety zone they demand to launch this monster is significantly bigger than what we had before. So we're just getting crazy out there and it's so much fun. Thanks, everybody.
My only request is some kind of, I don't think it's going to be dry ice, but something so that you can have the little smoke going down the sides of the thing. You have something like like just going down before
Vapor
it launches.
Vapor pores.
Yeah, it's because of all that frozen. Because on the, and then you have to have something like if you can put some stuff on it, that's going to crack and fall away as it takes off. So it goes, and then all this stuff comes off, and if we get it in slow motion, it might scale up well. Go ahead, Karl.
So hopefully I can start a GoFundMe so I can get out there.
We're losing
Director of photography for John Vegas early next year. That'd be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. You're breaking up, Karl. We're losing you there.
And to clarify, this is 12x everything. It's 12 times taller. It's 12 times the diameter. The fins are 12 times the size. Yeah. It's we were.
I'm surprised you're not shooting it off in Texas.
Well, we were pushing John. He started at 7x, and I was like, "Come on, let's at least do 10." And then we were joking about, this one goes to 11. Let's do 11x. And then, as it turned out, the available materials for like the lucite tube and everything was actually 12x. Okay, fine, we're doing 12x. But it's quite a lot of meetings back and forth to get. To land on that. But
I knew we were in trouble when he said it has to come in half because we can't get the full thing on the truck to take it out to the launch pad.
And we have to build our own launch pad for it. We have to build our own launch rig for it.
You have to build. Okay, well, we should talk about that because it has to be built so that it has it looks like the
gantries.
I even think you need one. I think you need to get one. We need to build a remote control roller so it rolls out real slow, out there. That's what we're gonna. So I mean, once you're there, once you're going down,
you need to get
crazy,
some model railroad folks involved in this. So you have little safe zone concrete bunkers and people in there with binoculars.
All right.
Awesome.
It's somewhere there. Of course, it's got to be a banana for scale. All right, next question.
It's from Rodrigo Munez from Stockholm, Sweden. Coming and being in Stockholm, Sweden, I am having a hard time finding a connection for an event in New York where I am helping my client find a live streamer. Apart from posting it in the Open Positions channel and asking in after hours, is there a directory of us OHers?
We're working on that. One thing I will say is if you're watching and if you're in Discord, it is really useful to put your location, your first name, last name, and location. I search that regularly. Oh, I need someone to do something or whatever. And so when people don't put their location, I'm like, really? So anyway, so I would highly recommend it. But we are, there's a lot of discussions about building a directory to make that happen. I have to admit, I saw yours go by, and you and I have an event. We both have an event on those 2 days in New York. And so I won't be there, but we're crewing up as well. So I was like, I don't know if I can help with both crews. But I'll take another look at it. Next question.
David Brady, New York, New York. For whatever reason, analog input to my ATEM has developed a crazy hum that I can only guess is the length of the run from mixer to ATEM. If I take the 2-track digital out for the distance run and convert it back to analog at the ATEM, do I have a chance?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it's certainly worth a shot. Shorten that unbalanced analog signal, and that would greatly reduce the chance of interference. Though if you are going the digital route, I would measure how fast or how slow the A to D conversion of the mixer is, and the D to A conversion at the ATEM side would be. Usually it won't be any slower than video, but always test that out. Conversely, you could alternatively you could run balanced analog all the way from the mixer to the ATEM and convert the balance to unbalanced using something like a radial J ISO or an Art Cleanbox Pro.
You go ahead, Courtney.
What Mickey said. But of course, when you convert to optical, you're disconnecting any electrical connection between the two, which is good, which is where ground hum sneaks in. The other possibility you might do is if your mixer and the ATEM both run off of 12 volts, is run a common power supply with enough voltage to power both of them and tie them both to the same power supply. That way they'll both be exactly on the same ground, and you may not have that hum problem.
Next question.
Jens Olson from Sandpoint, Idaho. I bought a new Kanto Tuk speakers. They sound great, but if I put my Linsoul KZ in-ears into the headphone port, I get a high-frequency buzz. Bigger headphones seem to work fine. What is causing this?
I would take a look and see if your Linsoul KZs are TRS or TRRS. So they come in both TRS. So if they've got if they've got a mic on them, they're going to be TRRS, and it may not be set up to be able to manage that. The connector there and the circuitry there has to be set up to fall over correctly, and it may not. I could imagine a speaker set that has a headset output, not thinking that you would ever put a microphone like that in there. So I think that I think that you may have two rings on the input on the connector for your Linsoul as opposed to one ring. See if that's the case and ask a question if I'm wrong. Next question.
Vienna from Australia back again. Can you talk about any new products coming out that you're excited about?
Oh, man. Okay, good. Karl?
So Behringer's got a synthesizer coming out called the UBXA. So it's a play on Oberheim, but it's going to be Behringer's first polyphonic aftertouch keyboard. So you can actually use it as a controller. So that's pretty exciting. It's going to be under $1,500 US. So Oberheim just released their remake of theirs for $5,000 US. So Behringer's one being a little bit cheaper, plus its polyphonic is quite nice.
A lot of us are really excited about the little Insta360 web camera. I think that's been bouncing around. I don't know of anything. I'm trying to think of anything else that I'm particularly excited about. I think those are the big ones. Next question.
Next question in from me, and the question is, gold mount or V mount? What camera battery is most secure?
Good, Bill.
I would think gold mount's probably the top of the line. I've used both gold mount and V mount, although I do have to say that I've jettisoned both systems in favor of smaller batteries, only because traveling with and carrying those large gold mounts has gotten more and more problematic over time. The whole system is, I think, overpowered for the kind of draw that modern cameras are using. If you do a lot of lighting and stuff like that, you're still in really good shape with those bigger systems. But I moved down to Sony M series, and you can usually find adapters where I take 2 or 3 of the smaller Sony F series or M series and put them on a gold mount plate or a V mount plate and power a V mount camera with those. But it's up to you which direction you want to go.
Good, Mitchell.
Yeah, that's good advice from Bill. I prefer the gold mount only because I've had V mounts fall off the camera, which is not good. And if you're not careful, it can create a chain reaction. If your tripod is not properly locked down, the V mount falls off, the camera falls forward, and then it pops off of its mount and drops straight onto the lens, thus bricking the camera.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, they say that the gold mounts are more secure. However, for the 12K, the gold mount is not as good as the V mount. If you did the research, people were having problems with the gold mount for the 12K. So I've got V mounts on my 12Ks.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, gold mount definitely. Though I've never seen a lead acid battery fly away. So
yeah, I will say that from a convenience perspective, I have a tendency to use V mounts, and that has to do with the fact that the first camera I got had V mounts. I started buying batteries for it, and now I don't go back. But I will say that I believe that gold mounts are generally more secure. And we definitely get kits with gold mounts. And if I was worried about security, I'd do it. I will admit that when I put V mounts on, I put them on, latch them hard, move them around a little bit to make sure that they're really where they need to be. And I've never had one come off. But I also don't put them in difficult environments very often. Next question.
And it's from Bob Sturdivant in Amman, Jordan. Has anyone with the Insta360 Link tried to use the whiteboard stickers on a sheet of paper for edge-to-edge top-down view?
Go ahead, Bill.
I can't imagine it wouldn't work. The one thing that I might suggest you do is upgrade from a piece of paper to something like foam core. Particularly, I think if I was going to build a rig like that, which is some sort of mounting that I could put a document or a book or whatever on and have it pin registered using those corner readers, I would probably use 1/2-inch foam core in white because it would be stable, it wouldn't bend and get things out of alignment, and I could put it in the closet when I wasn't using it and bring it out, and those stickers would just let you register your camera easily. That seems sensible to me, more sensible than putting on a piece of paper where it probably is going to get wrinkled.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I can imagine it wouldn't work. I mean, Alex can tell us when he hooks it up, but I think the whiteboard mode, which is designed to detect those corner pieces, assumes that the whiteboard is right side up and somewhere in front of the camera. In the top-down desk mode, where it looks down at your desk and then auto-corrects the keystoning, it also flips the image upside down because it's looking at it from the top side down. So it has to flip it around so it's right side up. And if it flips it around right side up, that wouldn't be a good thing because then all of your writing on the board would be upside down.
And I'm going to prep a couple more things for the second hour. Bill, can I hand this off to you and have you take over questions for a little bit?
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on. Next question.
Hershey Trivedi from Daytona Beach, Florida, and on the panel today. What is the difference of having RCA to 3.5 compared to having a solution that can use a 1/4 inch to 3.5?
And Mickey's going to start us off here.
Yeah, 3.5 mil input would typically expect unbalanced consumer line level audio. An RCA output would be delivering the same signal, while a 1/4 inch output would typically be if it's coming from a mixer, be a balanced professional line level signal. So if you send professional line level balanced to a 3.5 mil input, there would obviously be a pin configuration change, a level difference, and also an impedance difference. So if you're sending to a 3.5 mil input, you most likely want to stick with RCA. And
Karl.
Yeah, so as Mickey said, Mickey mentioned before that you can use like a clean box or like a radial. So there's the kind of things you can convert from a 1/4 inch to a 3.5. There is different flavors of 1/4 inch as well. So a 1/4 inch could also be a headphone. So that's a whole other, kettle of fish when you're dealing with that. But yeah, the 1/4 inch can be different types of signal as Mickey said, +4, and you're definitely going to, if it's a 3.5, you're probably going to a -10. So there can be a mismatch. But using a clean box or something similar will help you get the correct level into what you need to go, but you will need to put something in between most likely.
And Courtney.
Yeah, they covered most of the stuff. Typically a 3.5 inch input is designed, if it has a TRS input, it's designed for a stereo input, high impedance -10 volt, -10 dB input, consumer level input, and the balanced is designed for 600 ohm or low impedance. So you have, like they said, a matchbox or some type of matching converter to go. And so typically a 1/4 inch to 3.5 is for carrying a balanced line is very rare because, like I said, most 3.5 inputs are designed to carry a stereo unbalanced instead of a balanced input. So, like they said, RCA to 3.5 is your best bet because the impedance is correct and it takes stereo out, left and right into the TRS input.
I think I heard you miss by 3.5 inch. That would be an interesting connector, 3.5 millimeter.
3.5 millimeter, excuse me. 1/8 of an inch.
I was imagining a 3.5 inch phone plug. That would be very interesting. Mitchell wants to say something.
Well, a number of assumptions are being made here. And if it's a 1/4 inch, if it's a single 1/4 inch, it's probably a headphone jack, it's probably stereo, and it's probably unbalanced. And that might work with the 3.5. But if you see 2 1/4 inches, as chances are it's a TRS balanced output, and then you need a matchbox to get it back over to the 3.5, depending on whether it's an input or an output.
Yeah, and remember that for any balanced audio chain to work, you need 3 conductors. You need ground and then positive and negative respect to ground. So you can sometimes look at the barrel and just see how many divisions of the barrel on any connector. And if there's only 2, that is not a balanced thing no matter what else you're doing. You just can't do it that way. Let's move on to the next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana. There used to be an app called Chirp that you could generate a sound that when played over a phone or transmitted over radio would give Chirp users the link or text on their end. Is there any way to do this now that Chirp has closed?
I haven't heard of anything like that, but this reminds me of the apocryphal stories, possibly. No, they're actually true, of Steve Wozniak building his phone freak boxes back in the early days and sending tones down there to fool the AT&T switching system. I have never run across this, so I don't know if anybody on the panel has had Chirp experience. It doesn't look like it. So sadly, Chris, Courtney will weigh in on it.
Well, if Chirp doesn't exist, you have to have something that's going to hear those FSK encoded tones and decode them. So if they were the only ones that made the decoder, then you're out of luck. This is the same technology that uses on television. You'll hear that when it goes to an emergency broadcast system or a Amber Alert these days that interrupts your TV viewing. That sends a coded number or a coded a text message down to the receivers, and the receivers will decode that. But unless you have a specific decoder designed to receive those FSK frequencies and decode them back into text, you're out of luck.
Mitchell.
Adding to Courtney's comment, if you're watching CNN and they go to commercial, you hear the telephone tones flying. It's usually commanding a remote device to switch the audio or video over to a local server to play local or regional spots. And the device that Bill's referring to is the famous Blue Box.
There you go. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is in. If you had to consolidate a hardware-based electronic music studio for the broadest sonic palette in the smallest space, what synths would you use and what area would they cover?
Good to have Karl here. Karl, take it away.
So Novation Peak would probably be up there. If we're talking like desktop, so we're talking like how much space it's going to take up, the Novation Peak would cover nearly everything. That's a hybrid synth, so it has essentially FPGA oscillators going into an analog stage after that. Other than that, I'd say the Jupiter M by Roland, which is fully digital, again, give you a very broad. And on the full analog side, I'd say a Poly D. Those three synths would take up relatively small space on your desk. Or you can just slide away like a keyboard tray, like a QWERTY keyboard tray. But yeah, they would be the three synths I would pick as far as getting different flavors. They will have different flavors, but also not taking up too much space.
Fair enough. Next question.
Eric Antonio from Washington, D.C. I miss my Sony MDR-V700 headphones, slightly bassy with a touch of brightness. So far, my replacement purchases have been too flat. Has anyone on the panel used the V700s and found a happy replacement for them? Thanks.
And we're going to start with Karl.
So the Sennheiser 280 Pro. So they are also equally bassy. They're very good for synthesizers, but they're a closed back as well. But yeah, Sennheiser 280 Pro.
Mickey?
Sorry, I stepped away there. These are the 280 Pros that Karl had mentioned. Though what I would recommend would be the Audio-Technica M50X if you want closed back, and if you're going for a more, if you don't mind having open back headphones, I'd go for the Sennheiser HD 600s.
And Mitchell.
If you do voiceover work like I do, I've heard the MDR's V700s, and yes, they're bassy and high, but if you're looking to replace them, the best thing you do is get another pair of Sony headphones. In this case, the 7506s are the standard, and they're pretty cheap at $75.
Yeah, I'll just note it depends on the content you're doing. If you want to listen to music, I use 7506s. I have, I think, 9 pairs at present because they have a nice little presence peak and makes it really easy to hear words, dialogue. And most of the time, that's what I'm listening for as an editor. I want to make sure that nobody's fluffing their lines. But I wouldn't listen to music on them all day. So really, it depends on what you're doing. If you're listening to music, the higher end, the more accurate possible. You say you want bass and brightness. So I would pay attention to some of these suggestions. I think they're all good. Next question.
And Douglas Carmichael in with a question. The DiGiGrid IOX audio interfaces have stepped gain control, whereas the DiGiGrid D has gain potentiometers for each channel. I've noticed better gain structure when recording synths through the IOX. What could that be?
I'm not familiar with any of those, and so far nobody has clicked in. Oh, there we go. Mickey's going to help us out. Mickey, go ahead. Yeah,
I'd say that gain structure is not not very so much a function of the hardware itself, but it's how you ensure that a piece of hardware or a piece of software interacts with another piece of hardware, or piece of software. So, maybe I'm not quite understanding your question. But yeah, it's not so much the single piece of single tool that you're working with that determines gain structure.
Courtney has a thought.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's because if the step type usually have a resistor ladder built into the switch, so it has discrete detents for specific voltages as it steps the output voltage from infinity to 0. Maybe it's a better match between left and right with the carefully matched resistors on those stepped switch rather than a potentiometer, because a potentiometer is variable and you can never get exactly the same setting on both. So maybe that's what's making the difference.
Interesting. All right, that's everybody. Next question.
Fred Eric Eckert from Bad Erdnab, Germany. I want to record sounds from the office space. Sounds like closing a door, opening a drawer, closing a wardrobe, adjusting light on an electric desk. What kind of microphone should I use?
Karl's going to start us.
It kind of depends if you want that sound to be in the space or if you just want the sound itself. So if you just want the sound itself, then like a dynamic microphone like an SM57, this is used a lot by people who do samples. So that's where you'd use it within less than a foot. If you want the sound like a door opening in the room, so you hear a bit of the room, then you want an omnidirectional condenser microphone. Pretty much any even measurement microphones are pretty good for this. So you can get measurement microphones for around $100. They're omnidirectional. They'll need phantom power, whereas SM57 doesn't need phantom power.
Mitchell.
Karl is spot on. For that kind of work, if you just want to get the sound, the mic right in front of Bill Davis there is a good choice. The Sennheiser shotgun tends to reject all kinds of outside noises and is very crisp. Sounds like a condenser, but it's a dynamic.
Mickey McAchore.
It depends on the use case. If you're trying to say, if you're doing Foley, you would typically want to stick with the same family of microphones that was used to capture the dialogue on set, so that the Foley or the effects that you're gathering will sit in better with the rest of the soundtrack. Popular choices, as Mitch mentioned, is the 416 that Bill's using, also the Neumann 81i. If you're trying to capture something that's a little bit different in perspective, if you're in a good recording environment, I would typically go for a large diaphragm. U87 or 414 works well for that.
And Courtney.
Yeah, for recording sound effects, I usually go with something like a 416, which is a RF condenser, not a dynamic mic. It gives you enough isolation because you want to isolate the sound effect from any surrounding buzzes or noises or room noise, because it's going to be cut into a sound effects track and mixed in with a bunch of other stuff, and you don't want to hear when that sound effects comes up, you don't want to hear any kind of ambient noise of the room before you hear the sound effect itself, or you don't want to hear the background level change behind it. So you want to get it as clean as possible. And a directional microphone will help you isolate that sound from anything else. A lot of times I've used a 816, which is a long shotgun from Sennheiser for recording sound effects, because if you're in outdoors in a noisy environment, you want to get some specific, doors, car sounds or door sounds or things, that you can filter out the rest of the traffic because of the super directionality of that long shotgun. So I always try and keep as little of the room into the recording as possible, because that kind of ambience is going to be mixed in later to smooth things out.
And Mickey, you had a thought?
Yeah, definitely. The types of effects that you mentioned, Fred, are effects that you'd probably want to capture more detail on, and most dynamics would not be able to give you that. So you most of the time would want to use a condenser, at least for the types of effects you mentioned. Aside from shotguns, other options would be small diaphragm condensers like hypers.
Okay, that hopefully should give you some ideas. Let's move to the next question.
And it's from Kyle Hammond from Chicago, Illinois. What is the current recommendation for the most cost-effective mic system for personal mics on multiple theater performers?
Karl's going to start us out here.
So for cost effective, as far as the actual transmitter pack, it would be the Godox megahertz range. So these work in the 500 megahertz. There's 96 channels. Now, that's just the transmitter. They do come with a lavalier mic. They come with it. But if you're in a theater, you may want to put in a different mic. The mics will probably be more expensive in that kind of system setup for theater use than the actual transmitters themselves. But the megahertz range from Godox is a really good start for keeping the price down.
And Mickey.
Yeah, with wireless in general, I'd say like the price range that most affordable I would go in terms of price range would be in the 600, 700 US. I would go with cable rather than cheaper, maybe less reliable wireless cable over that.
And that's always good advice, but I'm wondering here, there's multiple theater performers. So if we're on stage, they're probably looking for a system where the individuals who are moving around on stage have wireless transmitters and there's some kind of rack-mounted receiver system on the inside. So there's plenty of stuff available. I mean, Broadway does this all the time with multiple mics, but it's generally not an inexpensive thing to pursue high quality in a multiple wireless mic rig that has something that'll interface with a house sound system and that'll work reliably. Mickey has more thoughts.
Yeah, definitely, especially if you're pumping that sound through a PA system where you can physically hurt people. I would stick with something that would be reliable.
There you go, Courtney.
And another important thing is to mount the receivers above the stage, just above the stage. So it's always above the performers and probably equidistant from everybody from, the middle of the stage, the left or right wings. And so that don't put it out in the audience, don't put it backstage or in one of the wings, because you're going to end up, especially with these new, most of the low cost units are up in the, 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz range. And that stuff is blocked by other people's bodies. So if you can get the receivers up in the air, and don't try and remote the antennas, because remember, you have 3 to 4 dB loss every time you put a connector in the line for an antenna, and the cable, the RF cable to connect a remote antenna also attenuates the signal quite a bit. So you'd be best off just running a XLR cable up into the ceiling and then plug your receivers in up there. It's a little bit inconvenient as far as turning them on and off, so have the power remoted. But once you get the installation set up, it should be pretty reliable for you.
Okay, that's giving you some good choices. Next question.
Dr. Hasmut Gajar from Cape Town, South Africa. Can Alex Mickey explain how they have set up their video to appear and disappear or fade in and out their person, but their chair, in view at all times? I think it will impress some folks here in South Africa once I have that set up.
Mickey's going to explain video.
I'm answering this because since Alex has stepped away for a bit. So within, and I'm not set up to show you ATEM software control, but if you go to ATEM software control and go to the media tab, there is a button in the bottom left that says capture still. So what you do is you step away from your chair, set it up so it's nice and straight, and grab your mouse, and while you're off frame, hit capture still. That would capture your chair all by itself, all by its lonesome. Put it in your media player, and you can cut to that.
I don't know why anybody would ever want to do that, because it's just a crazy thing to ask people to fade out of their shot while they're talking to people and then fade back in. So yeah, the answer is a little ATEM mix or anything like that will do that special effect, and I have to come back or it's going to annoy people tremendously. Next question.
Larry Engelhardt from Chicago, Illinois. Any comments about the quality of Eartek communicators versus Hollyland?
I don't see anybody popping in for this one, and I'm not familiar with either of those two brands. I know Alex does a lot, so this is one of those circumstances where you've just been unlucky that Alex had things to do today, or I'm sure he would talk at length about this. So hold on to your question, bring it back the next time, and hopefully there will be someone here who has experience with exactly that. Sorry about that. Let's move on to the next question.
Frequent panelist Josh Kaufman from Pittsburgh, PA. Mickey, Any tips for multitasking when audio is your primary focus? How much of the current show are you handling while also being a panelist?
And Mickey is going to tell us.
In terms of the actual broadcast sound, I'm not doing anything right now. There's no active mixing that is going on for this show, at least currently. In terms of what else am I handling during the pre-show? I make sure people are on comms and make sure the show goes on air. But aside from that, that's it.
Be honest, he taunts us mercilessly during pre-show by making us do silly things that I actually enjoy, which is terrible. Next question.
And it looks like we're wrapping things up here a little bit as we go into the second hour. Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. Has anyone here used Google Tone? There's a long link to that.
Let's see. Nobody has popped in on that. I have never even heard Google Tone. Is that just a delivery of standard 1K and other kinds of test signals? I've never been a part of it. Oh, we've got it pulled up there. So yeah, Google Tone. So it looks like is it? Boy, that doesn't say anything except it's got privacy practices. That would be a little off-putting for me. Oh, as you're scrolling down, let's see. Broadcast any URL to computers. Oh, it's a URL sender. Why did they stand? I use a computer. Let me just read it. Google Tone turns your computer's microphone while the extension is on and uses your computer's speakers to exchange URLs with nearby computers connected to the internet. Sounds like an interesting niche product. I've never used it or encountered it, and I don't see any other hands raised here on the panel for anybody who has done the same thing. So I'm not sure if we have an answer for you. We do have. Oh, well, the next one is microphones. So I guess we're out of general purpose questions. So whether or not we're going to go a little bit early or whether Alex is going to come back and lead us into the second hour is questionable. But we'll find out as we go along. So thank you all for being here today. The panel has done, as always, an exceptional job of answering the questions. And for those of you who have never asked a question on office hours, just understand that it's excellent if you do it early. So if you're new to the show, follow the links when you register and you will understand how to get to our Makana system. And the Makana system will allow you to send your questions in. It's a real simple process, and the earlier you get them in, the more time the panelists have to research things and get ready for the regular show. So let's see. We have the panel discussion up. I thought there is one other question. Mitchell, you want to dive into that Josh Kaufman question?
I can jump ahead to that. By the way, my mom used to use her own tone. It was called "Don't use that tone with me, young man." So maybe there's a combination. I don't know. Last question in from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, PA. Panelists' thoughts on GPU to enhance audio workflow. And this product that promises to do just that is at that link.
Yeah, www.gpu.audio. I have, again, not heard of that, and I don't think anybody else has raised their hand for that one. But it's interesting. I always thought of audio as being so much smaller in terms of signal complexity than video that I really haven't spent much time thinking about it. But if a GPU, the graphics processing unit, can do audio, that would be interesting. Alex, you have some thoughts?
Yeah. I think that it looks really promising. The GPU potentially can provide a lot more horsepower to do much more complex things like noise reduction and things that usually that's one of the big problems. You'll notice that with the mixed pre, for instance, some mixed pre's have noise reduction, some don't. They only have them on certain channels, and a lot of that has to do with the processing that's required to actually do that. With GPU, you have an enormous amount of processing that can handle that. So I think that it's potentially pretty interesting.
So, Courtney.
Yeah, it's basically using the GPU as a DSP, a digital signal processor. A lot of times that's handled in hardware, but the GPUs have the hardware to manage many streams of signal processing simultaneously. So all that parallel processing can be used to create a digital signal processor with a lot of neural capabilities, artificial intelligence applied to clean up your audio and do things that you couldn't do with a simple digital signal processor.
And Mickey's going to weigh in on this as well.
Yeah. definitely GPUs have a lot of horsepower there that can be used for computation of audio. My concern would be its use in a live situation. I don't know how latent it would be, because when you're dealing with audio, you want to have as little latency as possible, and that's why dedicated audio DSPs are 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 preferred, because they can deliver. They're designed specifically to process audio and can deliver that at a very, very minimal latency.
Perfect. And that takes us right to the top of the hour. And Alex is going to, I believe, jump back in because he looks like he's prepared.
I'm kind of prepared. I realized that my routing was off on my mixer, and I was looking at it. I was like, "Oh, I got this all worked out," and I still don't have it worked out. It's been a while since I've had to reroute it, and there's so much Dante mixed in with other inputs, mixed in with other things, that I was like, I don't think I'm going to pull this pin without talking to Mickey. So anyway, so I'm just gonna have to pop the mic every once in a while to make this work. So should be fine. The famous last words. So anyway. We have a couple more mics, and we thought it would be interesting to kind of keep on comparing them. Now, I don't know if you can hear any noise around me right now. I did turn off noise assist, and I did that so that everything's kind of on an even keel. So you may hear my voice may sound a little bit more airy, and there's not actually. I turned off I had some other drives that I turned off, so there's probably less than normal anyway. So we have that set up. We've got a couple different ones. We got I realized a couple ones that we didn't test on the last one, and we'll do this every once in a while, and I'll just have a collection of mics that we pull out and look at it. I think it's really good because I think it's good for people to hear the difference between them all. And I realized that my original sound, okay, let's try that now. My original sound was off. So now my original sound is on, so you may hear a little bit more air, I don't know, or not. I realized we hadn't in the first one, or when we were testing the USB mics, we didn't have a SM58. So we grabbed that. I also I brought in a Countryman. We put these in a lot of our kits, these little Countrymans here. I realized my DPA I left in the office because I use it for comms, and so it's the nicest mic for comms ever. Anyway, but the DPA is down at the office, as well as the PR40, because we were using it for Michael. And this is something that I think is really important, is that we're doing this Michael Krasny show. I didn't like the way he sounded with the MV7, so I just felt like it didn't sound really good. We switched on the last show to the PR40, which sounded dramatically better, in my opinion. Just had a lot more atmosphere to it than what we had, and that depends on the person. Other people sound fine, but you want to keep on thinking through that as we go. So we have the SM58, we have the Countryman that we'll test here. We also got Karl had suggested this T-Bone, so the T-Bone is here that we have here, and then we'll test it with some of the other mics depending on how much time. We'll test a couple of these, the ones that we haven't heard before, and then we'll go to questions. And then if we have time, we'll go back to some of the ones that we had before. So let's go ahead and again, I'm going to have to do this in a really rough way. So anyway, I'm going to put in the SM58 standby.
Turn off your phantom power.
I shouldn't have to. So the SM58, I mean, dynamic mics don't. Arguably, you might hear something, but you probably don't. So now this is the SM58. You'll probably notice it's a lot lower, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit. So now I'm going to bring this up, and it's going to be hard for me to jump back and forth really quickly, but you'll hear that the so there's the difference. I don't know how much difference you hear on your end between the SM58 and what you had there. I do have it cranked up here. Let me move my gain up a little bit.
I'm surprised at the amount of popping I'm hearing. Normally 58s are pretty well windscreen, but it may just be the fact that you got it so close to you.
Too.
Yeah.
And the SM58, in my opinion, is something that you want to keep pretty close to you. So as I start to move away, you'll notice that it gets pretty quiet pretty quickly, and as I bring it back up, you'll notice that it's coming right up to it. I try to train people that when someone hasn't used it before, I say just touch your chin and then pull it out, and that's where you want it to be. You'll notice that a lot of times my mics are generally, when I'm ready to test them, are going to be a little off center here. If I do this, you're going to probably hear the more of the plosives that are coming in because they're coming out. So 45-degree angle is kind of where I kind of tend to sit. Yeah, Mickey, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just for reference, can you walk us through the signal path from the mic?
Yep. Yeah. This one is this is actually going into my 205. So this is going this is going. It's not going directly into my. This is what I have to go back and reroute. The Scorpio is not. So we're not going directly into the Scorpio. We're going to the 205. The 205 is going to the Scorpio over Dante. And then the Scorpio goes via USB. It comes into my computer. My computer, I have a loopback set up so that I can jump from USB mics to that. So it's technically the Scorpio is a source for loopback, and loopback is providing that source as what I call zoom out. So zoom out so that any mic that I have plugged in can go into loopback and come out to you. So that the pipeline is a 205 to a Scorpio to loopback to zoom. So that's
So essentially, we're using the 205's pre-copy.
We are, yeah. So this is not going to be the Scorpio's pre, so it might not be quite as quiet as it would be otherwise. But it's how I use it every day, And I put it. That's what I was working on while we were on the break, and I was afraid I got some kind of feedback loop that I'm not sure exactly why. And so then I was like, okay, we're not going to do that today. I don't know what I did, but as I turned one of the mics on, the mixer went crazy, and I don't know exactly what I have set on those other channels. So. Anyway, so this is the SM58. Now we're going to do let me swap over. We're going to go to the T-Bone, see how the T-Bone sounds. Hold on.
Interesting how much proximity effect, and I forgot about that with 58s because I hear more singers using them, but that really does change its nature, moving it from 3 inches to 2.
This is the T-Bone, and let's see here. I'm going to turn this up a little bit to make sure, trying to get us to 24. So I'm going to keep on talking until I can get it to a reasonable height, reasonable LUFS. So I'm moving it up a little bit. The T-Bone is definitely not as, it's a little bit more sensitive than the 58, but not a lot. So now you have it, and it's a pretty good mic. This is actually literally, I wanted to keep it. This is the first time I've listened to it. I didn't plug it in before, didn't test it. I was like, I'm just going to wait. It's been sitting on my desk going, well, I'm going to wait for the mic thing so I can, and I'm actually pretty happy with the sound from especially given, I don't remember what the price was, but it's not particularly, what's the price, Karl? Is it
$5 US?
Sorry?
$85 US.
Yeah. So for $85, this is a pretty impressive mic. Now, the thing that it's missing that the MV7 has that we have there is that it doesn't have a USB out. So if I'm going to send this mic out, I need to send it out with some kind of preamp, some kind of USB converter that just totally a doable thing. But it is, and I feel like there's a little bit more. And again, we're going through a different preamp, but I feel like there's a little bit more noise. I hear a little bit more hiss than I heard with the SM58.
To my ears, with this chain, there's a little less definition in the mid-range and upper mid-range than I had than before, even on the 58.
Than the SM58?
Yeah, surprisingly. That's what I'm hearing. And now, again, it may just be that it's getting handled differently, but it doesn't seem as present. The low end's there, the high end's there, but in that middle, it doesn't sound as forceful.
Yeah. But okay. All right, and then I'll go back just to kind of reset our palette. I'll go back to the Neumann just for a second so we can see what the sound is from here. So stand by. So that's it's much louder. Sorry about that. But that's the Neumann. So there's definitely a lot more detail in the Neumann. I mean, it's a much more expensive mic. So you definitely hear the larger diaphragm. Now let's go ahead, and the other one that I have here is course, we have the MV7 to kind of test it. Now, in the last time we tested this, we tested the MV7 with a with the USB. I'm going to test it with the XLR. So stand by here. And by the way, we could do a whole second hour on mic stands because I have so many. So I have all these little mic stands that I've been using. I have a lot of opinions about them now. All right, so now I'm going to bring this MV7 up so that you can hear it here. Now I will say that from a sound perspective, and you guys can all talk to how it sounds for you. From a sound perspective, I feel like the MV7 and the T-Bone are very close.
Far less low end in this.
Yeah, so I think that the T-Bone may, from an XLR perspective, again, the reason that we use the MV7 is that I can put it into USB as well as XLR. But if I decided I only needed XLR,
the T-Bone does come in the USB version.
Oh, I bought the wrong version. I see how it is.
So yeah, there's a M. So the T-Bone is M for Mary, B for Bob, 7 USB. Or M for Mary. B for
But does it have both on the USB one?
It has. So yeah, it has both. So it has USB-C and XLR on the MB7 USB, and then the MB7. I think it's beta. They call it MB7 beta. It's the same name as the short one. So the MB7 beta USB's got the USB-C, and it's an identical mic. It just has a USB preamp in it, of course. They're the exact same price too. Both of them are $85, regardless of which one you get.
That's all I gotta say. So anyway,
I like the sound of the T-Bone over the SM.
Yeah, I actually here. Let's go back to the T-Bone because both of them are probably about the same gain. So just give me 1 second.
The T-Bone has a bit more bass, but I don't know what the mics are adding because some mics add a little bump in the presence range just to make it sound more sparkly.
So here's the T-Bone. I don't know. I think that I might like the T-Bone better than the MV7 as far as the sound goes.
So now the USB version of the T-Bone may sound a little bit different because you're using, of course, the internal preamp.
But now I'm using the XLR for both of these right now, though. So I'm going back and forth. Yeah, Mickey, you want to say something?
I think the T-Bone has quite a significant drop off in the high end, which if I EQ that on the board to compensate for the lack of high end, it would bring the higher noise floor of the T-Bone even higher.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to. Yeah.
And the funny thing about the 58 is it sounds like a 58. It sounds like a handheld microphone. I mean,
they always sound like 58s. Sound like 58s. Yes.
Yeah,
although
like 58s.
Actually, to my ears, on your voice, Alex, the 58, at least with the mics that I've heard so far today, I think the 58 works quite well with your voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I will say that if I go from a PR40, which unfortunately I left at the office, to the 58, you'll notice if you go to the Pixel Core YouTube page and you listen to the Teardown 1, that's on a PR40. Teardown 2 was a SM58, and then Teardown 3 was back to the PR40 because I got a whole bunch of comments from people going, hey, if you're going to pick at people's stuff, your audio doesn't sound good. These audio recorders sending me, messages going, you got to go back to whatever you did with the mic doesn't work anymore. So it's an interesting puzzle. Okay, let's try the Countryman here. 1 second here. Okay, now I'm gonna bring it up slowly. I didn't want to have it. I didn't know exactly where it would sit. So now I'm going to start talking, and I'll bring up the Countryman here. So this is the Countryman. This is often what I use on the road because it's a lot smaller. So it's easier for me to pack. Now it's a little louder than the other ones were. So this is the PR40. with not the PR40. This is the H6. This is the Countryman H6. Obviously, we're getting a little bit of, you can hear the more sibilance, definitely, from this. Now I can pull this back a little bit as well, and that might make it a little bit better here. Hold on. So now that's a little bit less sibilance by pulling that mic back. I often have made it pretty far forward, but I've been playing around recently with pulling it a little further back to get a little less of the sibilance that was there before. So it speeds it up. Sounds like a little bit more noise, a little more self-noise than we had before, or it's picking up just a little bit more of the fan. And this gets into, if this will give you a sense of how we're doing this stuff here. Hold on one second. So I can't hear me right now, but I can't hear, hold on, you right now. But so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep on talking and just turn up noise assist just so you get a sense of it. So now it's at 2, and now it's at 4, 6, 8, 10. So that's it. So that's the, I'm going to pull that out, just drop out of that for a second. So you can see how much something like noise assist helps, with that type of thing. It does take some stuff away, and you can now hear it probably as I've pulled it down. You can hear that it's probably 10 feels a little high. It feels a little like it's pulsing to me. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. The noise floor is an inherent byproduct. Well, it's something you would expect from an electret condenser. Right. So especially with a capsule that size that needs a lot of gain to bring it up to a level that's needed. That's definitely something you would expect with a headset mic or a lavalier. It does have that proximity harshness at least with your voice again, somewhere in the range of 1K to 2K or 2.5 even, that I would typically notch out or at least use a dynamic EQ on to tame. Yeah.
Mitchell?
It's funny. I don't hear the sibilance as much as I hear more mid-range on that mic, and it kind of tends to crowd out the sibilance. I like crisp microphones, but this one sounds like it's got just a little bit muddy to me.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it seems colder to me. The warmth that the larger diaphragms were putting in the signal is just diminished a little bit. And again, it's here for a comparison. Obviously we don't usually use these mics in the same environment. Like the mics are used in, we're going to use this mic for this thing. Now I use this when I'm on the road, again, because of size, although I may take something else for fun on this next trip that I take. But I usually, from a size perspective, what's great is that this fits into a nice little pack. But I may be taking, something else on the road, mostly because at hotel rooms, I found that even though this does really well, having something with a lot of off-axis rejection, like the MV7 or the T-Bone, might give me a little bit more, just cut out a little bit more of the room that I'm in. So I may be kind of converting to those. So why don't we open up? I'm going to go ahead, Courtney, before we get started there. And then I'm going to switch back to the regular mic and we'll answer some questions.
All right. I was just going to say, the DPA really helps eliminate some of the roominess of the sound because it is simply closer to your mic or to your mouth than the echo that's coming off the walls. Karl's a perfect example of that today in his not regular studio. He's not close to his microphone. Yeah. You can see how bad it can be, but it does a really good job of doing that, although it sacrifices a little smoothness of response across the spectrum.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and we'll hand it off to the questions, and I'll switch over back to my regular mic for now.
Okay, here's the next question in from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Best interface for those that cannot afford a Mix Pre 3 with noise assist. Thanks.
Any up, Alex? Or Karl is going to weigh in on that while Alex gets reconfigured.
All right, so if we're looking for noise assist, then I say the Mix Pre 3 is the best. So if you're looking for something like noise assist, I know that you can get universal audio and you can get the Cedar. plug in on the universal audio equipment as well, but it's going to be about the same price. If you're just looking for an audio interface that's clean, that can be bus powered, then I suggest the Behringer HD series. Be careful not to get the cheaper ones. So just ones that end with HD at the end of their names. There's three of them. They're much higher quality. They can be bus powered. They can also be powered off a power brick, so something to charge your phone. Same thing. So you can take them out on the road. As far as if you want like a portable mixer that's like the Mix Pre, then I would probably suggest the Tascam X8. So it actually has its high quality. It's the first recorder they've had that's got their high quality preamps in it. Their recorders in the past had a little bit cheaper preamps in them, but this one's actually got higher quality ones. It's about $500 US. So it's about the same price, maybe a little bit cheaper than Mix Pre 3, but it doesn't come with noise assist. So as I said, if you need noise assist, then get noise assist on the Mix Pre 3.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would say if you need an audio interface, if it's gonna stay with your computer, then I would go with the Apollo Solo with the C Suite plugin that comes out to I think around 850 US for those two items. If you do need something in the field, then the Mix Pre line or the Sound Devices 8 series would be your best bet for that. If you think you need a mix, if you're looking at the Mix Pre 3, I would go ahead and step up to the Mix Pre 6 because you will need it eventually.
And one of the things that I'm thinking about getting as a test is also the Centrance. Centrance makes a new audio interface for about $300 that looks pretty impressive. And there's a lot of smaller ones, the X2, the Shure X2U. These aren't going to have a lot of features to them, but if you just need to convert an XLR to USB, they can do a relatively good job, but they're not going to have the same noise assist solutions. Let's go to the next question. And by the way, this is a great set of people to talk about mics. So if you've got questions about mics, this is your day to ask. Next question.
Here's Vienna from Australia asking, what is the best portable microphone device to plug into my iPhone for audio recording interviews away from home?
Go ahead, Karl.
So it's the Apogee mic. I think if you're doing records and you're in a quiet space, then the Apogee MIC, the mic, it's a condenser mic. It's actually based on the 102, which is kind of what Alex has got right in front of him. Similar capsule, just a little bit smaller design. It's bus powered from the lightning port. So it goes straight into an iPhone. But that's a condenser in a quiet space for records, not necessarily for office hours or live work.
Yeah, and the one that we've used in the past for like connecting our wireless systems and other things like that have been the Saramonic. Saramonic makes a input. It'll either go into a headphone jack for the older phones or to the Lightning to the newer phones. And the reason we've used it is because we're literally taking electrosonic, transmitters and pumping them into. So if you need to actually get an XLR in, that's another way to do it. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was going to note the Saramonic has a couple of models that, and one of which has two inputs. So if you have to sit down with somebody and you want to record both yourself and the person across the desk separately, so you have level control over each, that is an option. I also have a lot of friends who use the Apogees and have really good results with the Apogee iMics.
And next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida, asked best mic suggestion for traveling executives. Something compact, USB, high quality. Thanks.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd probably recommend, especially if it's just for meetings, either the Countryman H6 that Alex demoed earlier or a DPA headset mic similar to the H6. Pair that with a single channel USB audio interface like a Shure, I think it's called the MBI. And yeah, that would be a simple, light package for them to use.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. The DPA is going to have a little bit more, in my opinion. It is a little bit more bass response, and I unfortunately didn't want to have one here. But it is so that's one thing to think about. The other thing that they also have for the DPA, and I'm just trying to find the exact. So the one that I have is a 4066. The other one that I have been threatening to buy and haven't pulled the trigger on, as a test is the 4560. This has the headset as well as the microphone built into it, so that it is so it's all one piece that you throw on, and so that might be good for executives as well. Next question.
David Brady from New York, New York. Back in the day, B&H used to have an audition booth for mics. Are there any commercial XLR selector interfaces like B&H had, either dial or push buttons, so one could have multiple mics ready and able for comparison?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would definitely go with radial engineering for those. They have switchers that are typically used in production for failover, and it could also serve the purpose for auditioning microphones.
Do you know what the model number is for the radio?
That I don't know off the top of my head, no.
Okay, well, then fine. Next, Bill, go ahead.
Well, also, when you think about it, a mixer is a switchable mic thing. You can put 5 mics into 5 channels of a mixer, make sure that they're all set up perfectly well, and then just audition them by muting or unmuting each individual mic. So it doesn't have to be anything fancier than that.
And the one that I found on their website is the Gold Digger 4-channel mic selector. Maybe one of the ones that you're looking for, and I might get one so that when we do the next one of these, I can just simply hit buttons. That'd be nice. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida. Thoughts on webcams with beam-forming mics like the Poly P15, Anchorwork B600, etc.?
I haven't seen any beam forming from a webcam that I thought was production quality. So I haven't used all of these, so I haven't tested all of them, but every one that says beam forming, and someone will be on a meeting, and they'll say, well, I've got this new one with a beam forming. And I don't say anything because I'm in a meeting, but it's not very good. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I don't think it's 100% there yet. But interestingly enough, Apple is doing a lot of research into that. And the microphones on their new laptops and things like that use some of that beamforming technology to try to get clear audio out of a really weird, a microphone on a flat panel computer in the middle of an office is a tough row to hoe for getting really clean audio. So there's a lot of work in that area.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, a lot of these cheaper cameras just have 2 microphones, and they just switch to whichever one's louder. So there's not really beamforming. Real beamforming usually takes more than one microphone input, and phase matches them and adjusts the combination of the 3 to form a beam that gives you a fuller frequency response. Yeah, most of them clip.
Yeah. Next question.
Stefan Fischer from Würzburg, Germany. Many say that good microphones last forever. Are you concerned about buying a mic that is like new condition, but is actually 10 years old?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I can speak from personal experience. I have my U87. It's sort of joined to me at the hip. I've been using it so long, and I bought it in 1978. And the only thing I've done to it is I had a refresh done by Gotham when they were around back in the late 80s. But other than that, it sounds so spectacularly similar to the way it did in the beginning, and the way I measure that is with my ears. I know what sounds right and what doesn't.
You go ahead, Karl.
The thing I'd be more worried about would be if it's been dropped. So that's dynamic mics can be dropped a little bit. Condenser mics, once you drop a condenser mic, it'll never go back to the way it was when it came out of the factory.
Good.
If that was me, be careful though, parts. Some microphones age really well. The high-end German microphones, the Neumanns and things like that, and there are others that seem to get better over the course of time. There are some microphones though that don't. And if you go to get parts, I have an SM5B, right? I don't know. It's somewhere back on that shelf there. And the foam literally just disintegrated, and I missed by 3 years the last guy, he was in Chicago, I think, who used to be able to supply foam windscreens for that. And so I am upset that I have my first serious voiceover microphone that I bought from a radio station in probably 1963 is now without a windscreen, and I can't find a replacement for it anywhere on the planet. So that's annoying.
Courtney?
If they're properly cared for, you put them in cases, you keep them away from humidity. This microphone right here, the Ships with an MK41 capsule on it, is older than Alex. I bought this and that's old.
Do you know how old I am?
Yeah. And yeah, I bought this back in the early 70s, and it still works today. Let me see if I can bring it up here.
I'm older.
Okay, this is a almost 50-year-old microphone. It has not been reworked by the manufacturer. It has its original capsule, and this is the original T-powered preamp on it. I've kept it clean. I have to go in and clean the gold contacts every now and then. But, you know, if properly cared for, kept away from humidity, condenser microphones can last a long time. Large diaphragm condensers a little bit harder to care for, and these are a lot tougher to handle. You see, that is the microphone you're listening to. If you drop these, they have a small diaphragm, and they don't have a connector attached to the middle of the diaphragm like a large diaphragm condenser does. So they're a lot more immune to rough handling. And of course, a good shock mount helps protect the microphone as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I wouldn't hesitate buying a 10-year-old mic. But like with anything, I would test first before paying. It's handy to carry a mix pre or a Sound Devices MM1, a simple preamp that would allow you to plug in the microphone and allow you to listen to it at least for like 5 minutes and allow you to determine its quality. But with all equipment as well, I would send it in directly for maintenance to, like, if you get, send it into Neumann, Sennheiser or wherever, just to give it a clean bill of health.
Yeah, I mean, most electronics will last a very long time if they're treated well. So that means that they weren't put in an area with a lot of heat. They weren't put in an area with a lot of humidity. They were never submerged in water. They were also handled with what I call soft hands as part of hard hands. The last inch of how things are set on the table is everything. Like when you set something on a table, if you hear it when you set it on as a thing, and we have people in our shop that will just drop things on the table or set them down roughly, and that whether it's a mic or a piece of electronics, definitely reduces the long-term viability of the product. And it's not one hit, it's many hits. And the worst part is that it fails unexpectedly. So we do a lot of training on having people, think about it. Also think about how they push the connectors in, how they, like a rough hands going into, putting connectors in reduces the quality, reduces their shelf life. So it's all those things to think about as you look at those. As a result of how I handle gear generally, I tend not to buy any used because I would be surprised if they handled it the way that I usually assume that it needs to be handled. Next question.
By the way, I've never dropped my U87.
Next
question coming from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. What XLR connectors and cable do you recommend as making your own mic cables? Amazon links would be great.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I love to use the Conair Star Quad cable. It's just well made and rejects, the noise that can get into a microphone. And I insist on the Nutric screw-on, usually the black ones. I don't know what the number is, but I've done thousands and thousands of them, and the combination works great. And you can use pretty much any kind of solder that you're comfortable with. I've got rolls of rosin core solder that I refuse to give up. They can come and knock my door down, but they're going to have to buy that rosin core solder out of my hands.
You're not, for those listening, it's not something it's not easy to buy in the United States anymore. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, definitely for connectors, for full-size XLR connectors, Nutric would be my go-to. If you're looking for low-profile connectors, there are a lot of companies that make them. Switchcraft, Remote Audio, Cable Techniques, though majority of them are actually just modified Nutric. So they just chop them off and make them low-profile. For microphone cables, I'm either Canary, as Mitchell mentioned, or Mogami. For multi-channel cables or for installation, I usually go with Belden or Mogami. And yeah, Mogami, really good stuff. They last. And you get what you pay for with cables.
Now, are you buying those Mogami assembled, or you're making them yourself?
For snakes, I buy them assembled. But if they're single channel where it takes me 3 minutes to make them, then it's cheaper just to make them.
Yeah, and one thing, and by the way, this is great crew to be asking mic questions and mic cable questions and so on and so forth. So make sure to throw your questions in before we run out and decide that's the end of the show. The one thing I would say is that if you haven't made cables before, the best thing to do is buy a roll of about 100 feet of cable and a bunch of cheap connectors, and get your Weller soldering iron and sit there and solder some together. And it's okay if you ruin some for a while. That's usually, about 50 of them is about what it takes. What I find is about 50 connectors to get to a point where you're making nice, clean ones. There's a movie, by the way, there's still a movie from the 80s. I thought it was the 50s, but it's the 80s on YouTube on how to solder and solder connectors. I don't think it's necessarily XLRs, and it's still the best video to watch before you get started. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with Mitch about the Canary Star Quad cable and the nitric connectors. And the other thing that I will do, this is not a nitric connector, but it's a short cable too. If I have to make a right angle, I'll go ahead and cut a lot of the rubber strain relief off the back of it to make a right angle if it has to fit into a windscreen. And as far as soldering goes, Rosin Core is still easily available. It's a leaded software that is difficult to find anymore. Most of it has to be lead-free to be ROHS compatible.
And when you guys, now that we're going to geek out a little bit, so what do you use when you're to hold the connector? Like, so everybody's got different ways of doing this. How do you hold the connector as you're doing the soldering? Is there a certain way that you approach that?
Pan of ice.
A pan of ice?
Yep, pan of ice.
Pan of ice.
It has a rubber jaws on it that are shaped to hold something round, and that really works well.
Mickey?
Usually helping hands. I don't know if that's the same thing as pan of ice. Though in our shop downstairs, I have this wooden plank that I made that I put for XLRs, male and female connectors on. So if I'm soldering a female connector, I plug it into the male that's in the wooden plank, and that holds it up. And I have a variety of connectors there.
That's a great idea. I don't know why I never thought of that. Yeah, I just bought a helping hands for something else that I was working on that has I don't have it within arm's reach, but it's got magnets. It's got a metal plate, and all the helping hands have magnets. And I didn't think that was going to make much of a difference, but it's huge because you just move the arms around where you want them along the metal plate, and you kind of realign them. Like, oh, I really wish. So they're not all coming from the corners. You can move them to exactly where you want them, and they just stick to the plate. Anyway, little thing, but I didn't think about putting connectors into wooden boards. Now I have a weekend project. Next question.
From Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What do you guys think of the new white MV7?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I think it definitely adds a certain amount of coloration to the sound.
Next question.
Ouch.
I didn't even get a response off that one. Okay, here we go.
I tried to help.
Thanks. Dave Troutman, Edmonton, I guess that's Canada. What do people think of ribbon mics?
Good, Karl.
So ribbon mics are probably one of the earlier type of mics from the 1920s. Essentially what they are, they're usually a thin layer of aluminium that's in a strong magnetic field, so there's permanent magnets. They're a dynamic mic essentially, but they have the response of similar to a condenser. They can be very fragile. They can handle extremely loud sound pressure, so they're used in front of guitar cabinets or in front of a horn section or a brass section. Sometimes you'll find them in pianos, a little bit further back, not right up against piano. And then they've also figure eight. So they're all figure eight. That's just the way that, as far as how the ribbon is, the strip of aluminium is. They're used a lot in studios. You generally won't find them out in the world. They pick up way too much, so they need to be used in a controlled environment generally. And you need to match your impedance. So preamps are really important as far as impedance, because if you put too low, if it goes into a preamp with too low impedance, it'll actually change the characteristic of the frequency response. So they are very characterful in a way, and you can actually play, if you have a preamp that has adjustable impedance, you can actually tune the mic to the instrument you're trying to record as well. That's another thing you can do with them.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
So there's a couple that I've used over the course of my career that are very highly prized. It's hard to find them in good shape, but if you can find an RCA 77DX, I used to see them a lot in voiceover circumstances. It's a classic microphone. I was trying to pull up a picture of one, didn't manage to do it in time, but you'll recognize it. It's almost iconic, and in fact, microphone icons often use the shape of 77DX for that. The other one I've run across that I've used actually to good effect, I don't have one right now, and they've gotten really expensive, is the Coles lip mic. And it was particularly big in very loud motorsports and things like that, because literally it has a little bar on the top of it, and you put the bar on your lip, and that forms with the cage around the microphone a very isolating little environment, and then the ribbon picks up your voice, and so you can get acute clarity even in extremely loud circumstances, like for races or something with loud engines. So they're still useful. They're good mics.
Good, Mitchell.
I'm with Bill on the 77DX. It is a quintessential microphone that everybody thinks of, the pill-shaped mic that sits on the desk in front of Larry King. That is the mic generally used. In fact, Larry King was being honored locally here in a panel discussion, and they had everybody set up at the panel, and I walked over with a 77DX. I said, "Excuse me, we can't start just yet." And I walked over and I swapped his mic out for a 77DX, and he was like very thankful. The other place you see the ribbons, and sometimes they're stunt mics, David Letterman and the old Johnny Carson show. Those are ribbon mics. And if you're going to use a ribbon, you probably need a cloud lifter these days.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and I'd be very careful. The older ribbon mics, the passive ribbon mics from the 40s and 50s, I would not expose them to really loud sounds because they can be damaged. We would always take the ribbon mics and put them away in cases if we're going to be recording gunshots or if there's going to be any kind of explosions on the set, because a loud concussive noise with a high pressure wave can rip the ribbons and damage those microphones. So you don't want to use those. You want to pull out the moving coil dynamics to record those kind of sound effects. But they're great for studio work. Take care of them and avoid dropping them.
Next question.
Next question from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. HyperX Quadcast S.
It's another mic that lights up. It's got color. So I have a hard time taking a mic that has color in it seriously, but the it could be good. It's got some bling, but we haven't tested it, so we might have to add it to the list of things for the next mic off. Of a handful of more mics. I'm just going to slowly have this large collection of relatively inexpensive mics. Go ahead, Courtney.
And I'd be careful of a microphone that has colored LEDs in it, because if they're using pulse width modulation to change the color of those LEDs, that can get into the audio signal, and you don't want that. Little square waves. Nah.
Now, next question.
Next question is from Stefan Fischer from Würzburg, Germany. Does anyone use tube microphones? If yes, why? How long does a tube mic need to be ready to use after switching it on?
Go ahead, Karl.
So they're ready pretty much straight away. They're actually like a preamp tube, not like a power amp tube. So they're a little bit different in that way. So I have the SCTs 2000s. So these are my replacement for the M50s. I can't afford $6,000 per microphone. So I'm just paying about $400 per microphone. But yeah, so essentially they have a separate power supply. So they don't use phantom power. They have their own power supply. And so this power supply delivers the power, and it's usually through a Pento, so it's usually via a 5-layer tube. That's what most of the tube mics use. Essentially, they're quite good. They're noisy, so they're going to have a noise floor. They're not the same. That's why the U87 is the king, because U87 was one of the first solid-state microphones that had a low noise floor. These have a loud noise floor. That's just their character, but they handle dynamics a little bit differently to solid-state as well. So they don't handle dynamics linear. They handle it, it's more like a log rather than linear. That's the way of thinking about it.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, we have a couple of tube microphones. Why do we use them? Every mic sounds different, so that we don't think of it in terms of this is a tube, this is not a tube. It's just what would get us the sound that the product that what would get us closest to the product that we're trying to get. How long would it need? How long does it need to be ready? there are some people that say it's okay right away. Some people say 30 minutes. Some people say 2 hours. I don't know who to believe. So pretty much as soon as I get if I have a session that would be using that mic, as soon as I get to the studio and start setting up the booth, I turn it on immediately.
And Mitchell?
Yeah, I agree with Mickey. I think that it has a lot to do with the if you're recording music and it's a singer like Frank Sinatra, he just sounds great on a tube microphone, and you usually see him with a tube microphone. As to how soon you should turn it on, the question is how soon should you turn it off? That's the issue.
Next question.
Kenny Hampton from Greenville, Illinois. I own an AKG 414 purchased new in the late 1970s. And I've heard that the diaphragm material has changed from the older mics to the newer versions. Are some materials not available any longer? And is this true for JBL high-frequency drivers as well?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Here's the thing. I mean, even a condenser microphone that's been around for a long time, that's been exercised over many, many, many years is going to be reduced in quality. And depending on what technology they use to spatter the gold on the diaphragm to make it what it is, it's likely to change. But the question is it change for the better or for the worse? I've noticed, again, I talk about my U87. That's the same capsule that's been sitting in that mic since 1978, and it just seems to be able to age with me. So it seems to work okay.
Good, Karl.
So a lot of the times why they update capsules has got to do with yield rates during manufacturing. So they need to actually get the yield rates up on the capsules, so they actually make it out of more modern alloys, more modern materials that keep the capsule from tearing during manufacturing. Now, just remember, AKG is owned by Samsung, so profits are important to them now, not just quality.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, and I think it's always a race between technological advancement and the desire for something authentic sounding that has an old sound that has been around forever. In one place I noticed it, I used to chase speakers, and all the speakers I went for were bigger and bigger and bigger. When I had to move into here and I got those little JBL 305s, I realized that they really had spent a lot of time on the engineering. And while there wasn't a direct equivalent between the JBL 305s and maybe a JBL L100 Century that I'd had growing up that had a really particular sound, the difference wasn't as big as it had been when I was trying to find small speakers in the old days. So it's this fight between technological advances, better material for speaker cones, better amplification, cleaner signals coming into it. And what you remember from those old days when, it was an analog radio signal coming through something in your car, and then you put in a stereo, and all of a sudden you thought, wow, this is miles better. And I'm not sure I can make a good call about whether, the modern stuff is actually better than the old stuff, or whether it's just nostalgia that's making me think the old stuff sounds better than I just don't know. It's hard to quantify this.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
It wouldn't be a case for the late 70s, but you got to remember Mylar, which is used for the diaphragm these days, was invented in the 50s. So vintage mics earlier than that were not using, condenser mics were not using sputtered gold Mylar. They were using a different type of plastic, which may degrade over time. The Mylar is pretty good as far as maintaining its elasticity and over the years. So,
next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Tom's Hardware says the Blue Yeti is the #1 low-cost USB mic. Do you agree? Is Tom's a good source for reviews?
Go ahead, Karl.
So if you're talking about USB mics in the class of the Blue Yeti, I'd say the Bigfoot from Behringer, which is obviously by its name, is the exact same microphone, just with some modern tweaks. That's all.
Good, Mickey.
Going back to what I mentioned earlier, every mic sounds different. So, and in my opinion, the Blue Yeti microphones tend to be tend to sound a little bit more on the bright side. So I think it would fit a lot better for people who have maybe a more muddy or lower register in their voice to bring some clarity to the capture of their voice. Though I think my favorite all-purpose USB microphone would probably be the MV7.
Bill?
I have a hard time thinking that just because something is number one, that means it's the best these days. Particularly, I mean, you could say that the McDonald's Big Mac is the number one fast food hamburger. I'm not sure that anybody's going to say that is equivalent to quality or taste or whatever. There are a lot of people who say, no, I like the taste of a Whataburger better than I like Big Mac. And that's, these things are perfectly reasonable. The qualities that you get out of them, are they full range? Are they full frequency transducers? Do they last? Are they value for the money? I mean, it's arguable. I think it's inarguable that a fine Neumann should cost a lot more than an SM57. That doesn't mean they both aren't really good microphones when used properly. And there is a difference in the sound that they both make. Now the question is, though, is it more people are going to buy the least expensive one? And is the delta between the quality important for what you're doing? If you're doing voiceovers 24 hours a day, I would argue it probably is. But if you're just recording your kids at a birthday party, it probably isn't. So horses for courses.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, my gripes about the Blue Yeti, because a lot of people buy it because, it's been popular on social media, is it looks ugly. And it has the stand that it comes with, is not shock mounted. It sits on the table and it tends to amplify any thumps or bumps or keyboard noise into the sound. It's side address, and a lot of people put it up talking to the wrong side. So, it is a bit problematic. And I just don't like the way it looks when it's impeding the frame and people have it, like here. And it's ugly. I like to keep the mic out of the frame.
Mitchell?
It's possible that two mics can do exactly the same job with exactly the same sound, but be completely different. I'll add to what Bill was just saying. I've got a U87. I do a lot of voiceover work. If I were to travel, I would use the mic that Bill has, a 416 Sennheiser, because it sounds a whole lot like it on voices. It's just one of those happy matches.
Next question.
Bob Sturdivant from Amman, Jordan. What would you do if you were in Karl's situation to reduce the room sound if video wasn't an issue?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
What situation? Are you in a hotel room?
Where are you, Karl?
Where are you? I would hang, if you're in a hotel room, Karl, you don't have to nod or say yes. I would hang towels on the curtain rod next to you.
Go ahead, Karl.
That would be the first place I would do. Is that what you're doing?
So I do have padding on 3 walls here, but it's still quite a bright room, and my microphone is more than a foot away from me. We tried different things, but we're in a beach house, so we just don't have any audio interface in the beach house, unfortunately. So this is the best we could do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, typically, if I'm going to be in a room like that, that's one of the reasons I use one of those headsets. I also oftentimes will take an SM58 and put it really close to me because, of course, it won't pick up much around it. So SM58s are kind of a pretty tried and true, travel mic for me. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd bring all the mattresses in the facility in that room, along with all the couches and yeah, that's something that we typically do for travel shows where we need to record VO on the road. Right. So we put everything absorbent in a single room.
I always think of the behind the scenes from Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe, and he's under a sheet in his, like literally SM58 under his blankets in his hotel room doing the voiceover that ends up on the show. It was kind of a thing. So Karl, next time we expect a big blanket over top of your head, just like he's like a little tent. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, it looks, I don't know, it doesn't look like the walls are parallel. Are those parallel walls behind you and just a wide angle lens or?
It's not parallel, but the roof isn't. So the roof has a slant.
I see. Well, yeah, because it's a huge standing wave in there. What type of microphone are you using and how far away? You said it was about
an electric condenser, which is about probably 16 inches away. So we have other microphones.
What happens if you pull that? What happens if you pull that condenser closer?
It'll sound a lot better.
Well, then why did you have it so
attached to the camera? It's attached to the camera, so there's no way we can't. We just couldn't figure out a way to get around it. So we just don't have in this particular location the things that we normally have. That's all.
Got it. Okay. Next question.
Next question in from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. For each of the panelists, what are your favorite two mics and why?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Probably the Neumann U87, which has been mentioned here a couple times today, and also the Sennheiser MKH50 Hyper.
Tom?
I'm perfectly happy with my Heil PR40 that I've got here, but if you have to have a situation where you're going to do a mic drop, this 635A will survive just darn near anything.
Go ahead, Harshie.
For my choices, it would be a cheaper selection, so a USB microphone of any sort, the Samsung Q2U or the Q9U, and another one for an expensive side, an XLR microphone. And in that sense, if you're wanting to buy a $3,000 microphone, then go Neumann or anything like that. But Sennheiser definitely have good products, the Neumann for sure, and those are the two categorical, cheap and expensive.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I must be in good company because Mickey and I seem to agree. My U87, which I keep talking about, which, by the way, Pretto says that he has dibs on it when I pass on. And then the other mic is my 414, which I'm talking into right now. And the reason I like it over the U87 for this job is it would be total overkill to use a U87 on a Zoom call.
Go ahead, Bill.
MKH 416 that I'm talking into right now, and the TLM 103 Neumann in the voice booth, but those are only because I do tons of voiceover. If I didn't have voiceover as my primary occupation for those, I would have entirely different mics.
Courtney?
Yeah, I need a new mute button is what I need. Yeah, I like the 416. It's one of my favorite mics. The one I'm talking on now, the TechZone Stellar X2, which emulates the sound of a much more expensive Neumann U87. It's tailored. It even picks up those little noises. It's tailored to sound like a U87. And so for the price, which is under $200, around $200, it's price per performance. I'm not afraid to leave it out in the open. I'm not worried about it. I don't have to coddle it. And for the sound, I think price per performance, it's my favorite for using on Zoom calls.
Next question.
Next question in from Adam Terry in Kansas City, Missouri. What is your preferred method of cable management, specifically XLR cables along your mic arm?
Go ahead, Mickey.
If you're talking about the mic arm that similar to like what Alex uses, what they use in radio stations, if there is no place to run the cable in, I would go for Velcro straps. But if you're talking about the standard like boom arm on a mic stand, I'll just coil the cable around the arm.
Go ahead, Tom.
The OC White that I'm using has it all internal, so that's taken care of.
Go ahead, Bill.
I use gaffer's tape and black bread ties, the little wire inside plastic things, and they're usually recovered from some product that got shipped to me, and I just put everything black on there so it can't be seen if the things get on camera.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I use these. I designed and printed out some of these little mic clips for the 10 millimeter square boom mic arms that are cheap that you get on Amazon, and these just clip right onto that square thing and hold the cable in the apex there, and they work quite well.
I never thought of getting clips for them. Go ahead, Mitchell.
The blue arm that I have behind me that has the U87 on it, it snakes inside, so it keeps it nice and clean, and it's a very low-profile looking mic. And then over here from my broadcast microphone, it's just a boom that comes out to me with the 414, and Velcro works great.
Yeah, and I wrap it, and I didn't notice that I wrap it in clockwise, from the back. So that's how I wrap the thing. I only noticed that recently because someone did it the other way, and it made me crazy. I was like, "Why is this mic cable wrapped the wrong way?" I didn't even know. I noticed I was doing it. Next question.
Harshid Trivedi from Daytona Beach, Florida. Alex, what are your thoughts of SE Electronics? They also have a. Pardon me.
Go ahead.
They also have a USB mic named the Neom, as I learned from someone in After Hours.
I have no thoughts on them because I didn't know they existed until you asked the question. So now I'm going to have to go do research. So I'll take a look at them. And we'll have another one of these occasionally when I've collected a couple more mics. So next question.
James Babbitt, San Diego, California. I've got a Bose S1 Pro portable Bluetooth speaker. What would you use to cut the strong bass output? The microphone is a Sennheiser Wireless EV100 stick mic.
Go ahead, Mickey.
If you're not going through a mixer, the Bose S1 Pro, search for it. It has an EQ, but bass and treble adjustment at the back, right beside each input. So I do it there. But if you do have a mixer in the pipeline, correct for the speaker system on the Bose unit, and correct for the microphone on the mixer.
Next question.
Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. Has the sound of the SM57 changed over the years?
Go ahead, Karl.
So an older SM57 from the 70s would sound different to a new one. That's only because the material is made of would have oxidized. So it's got paper in there. That's actually the diaphragm itself in the dynamic microphone. It's hard to say whether one made in 1971 and one made today sound the same because one's going to be oxidized by 50 years. So it's pretty hard to say. But I believe they're made to the same standard with the same materials 50 years later.
Next question.
And it's the last question. Paul Valhus from Austin, Texas. Tascam Mixcast 4 podcast workstation. What mics would you plug into it if you had one?
Go ahead, Karl.
So any broadcast dynamic mic, so like what we use here in office hours. So essentially, a Heil PR40, the MB7 with an XLR, or the beta version, which is just the XLR only. The T-Bone, so that's another one that sounds very similar. You could do an SM58, of course, but the SM58, as Alex showed before, you do need to get within probably about an inch, of the mouth to actually get something good out of it. Whereas I think the SM7Bs and all those get maybe 2 inches, 3 inches. You get the same sound. But yeah, any of the kind of microphones we use here that are dynamic, it does have phantom power, so you can do condenser, like a 102 like Alex has. But I think for podcasting, it's better probably use dynamic.
Yeah, and with 4 people in the room, I would never use the mic that I have right here. It picks up way too much around it. It would not be, in my opinion, a usable mic. A lot of times what we do with people around it, we want mics with a lot of off-axis rejection for podcasts. And so the ones that we've used the most for that have been PR40s, actually. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, what mics would you plug in? I'd go for the mics that get you the sound you're trying to go for.
Yeah, and I don't think that, I don't know what the big things that are important when we have 4 people sitting around, and I don't think the Tascam has this, is auto mixing, or you're going to end up doing it. You're going to do automation later if you don't do auto mixing on the way through. So if you're ready to go through post and do it, but if you just want something that's going to be a live recording and you're done, you need auto mixing. If you are going to do it in post, just be ready to do a lot of automation. So that's the to clean all those things up. All right, that was a good hour. A lot of discussion. The mics. I had a couple new mics. I'm going to keep on collecting mics, trying to keep them in a reasonable price range until maybe people start sending them to me. We'll see how that happens. But we'll keep them I might talk to a partner and see if we can't borrow some from, some of the higher end mics just to see what they sound like in comparison. We'll see how that looks. But we'll do this every, month or two. We'll just maybe every 2 months, maybe every quarter or something, do one of these just to kind of see where we're at. Anyway, it's good. It's a good opportunity to talk about mics. I think that it's a long-term discussion that we can all learn from. Thanks to our producers for all the great questions. And thanks to the panelists. Can't do this without you. It's really great to have the sound panel here answering really, really deep answers. Really well done. And again, of course, thanks to the incredible crew on the back end. 7 days a week, crew comes together, musters up, and builds an incredible show. So really, really well done on the back end. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into After Hours. A reminder that eCam, so David Paskin is going to be doing a lab for eCam right now as soon as we get over there. All right, here we go.
Credits.
Yeah. There they are.
There they are.
See y'all. Take care.
Take care. Good show.